Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, episode 65. Episode 65, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. And we got a lot of stuff to talk about today, some philosophy, and we're going to go through some of the glossary stuff. And as always, we are joined by our good friend and longhead way out in space in his deep bunker beneath his space station, Mr. Brett England, the Watcher. How you doing out there, buddy?
Doing well. So you're telling me it's episode 65 then?
That's right.
Sorry, you just threw out like 100 fives.
His glitch was way better than yours, man.
Yeah, it totally was.
60.
Yeah, 65.
We have a space delay.
Yeah, that's how you guys can tell that he's in space when I say, "How you doing, buddy?" And then he's like, "Oh, hey, man, yeah, how's it going?" And like that's how you can, if you guys time that perfectly, you can tell how far out in space he is. But you won't know what direction, so you still can't find
I'd be very interested to have somebody
give
do that
them
math
clues.
to see how close they are.
It's like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" "Oh, hey, buddy, how's it going?" It's all right, Watcher. Just as long as you're, no more than like a second behind, you're all right. Just don't try to play any massively online multiplayer first-person shooter games with that much lag. You're going to get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
I can make viral YouTube videos, though, of me destroying a keyboard or something.
Yeah.
Make viral YouTube videos.
What do you do for a living? I make viral YouTube videos. All right. It's time for Space Weather News. Sunset Sky Show. When the sun goes down tonight, step outside and look west. The crescent moon is passing by Venus en route to Jupiter. These bright heavenly bodies will be putting on a sunset sky show for the rest of the week. Don't miss it.
The moon is on its way to Jupiter?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Passing by Venus en route to Jupiter. Thanks for that, Kyle. Geomagnetic storm in progress. As predicted, a moderately strong G2 class geomagnetic storm is underway on September 11th as a stream of high-speed solar wind buffets. As a stream of high-speed solar wind buffets the Earth's magnetic field. This morning in Alaska, amazing auroras covered all of the sky, reports Ayumi Bakken. "What a fantastic magnetic storm," she said. At the peak of the storm, so far, northern lights descended as far south as Minnesota and Wisconsin in the United States. The solar wind stream causing this display is flowing from a canyon-shaped hole in the sun's atmosphere. Earth's magnetosphere could continue to be influenced by the stream for another 24 hours. NOAA forecasters estimate a 70% chance of minor storming through September 12th. So
I wonder why, or if this is why all of our car batteries are just like going to crap somehow. like my car battery went bad, and I took it into the store, and there were two other people in there getting batteries that had just gone bad.
yeah.
And then Laura's car, my wife's car battery just now went bad.
Yeah,
like
Laura.
a day later.
Laura of the intros to this show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my battery's good so far, but my phone battery's been dying really fast.
And maybe the solar wind is like, draining my battery somehow.
Yeah. So we have a solar wind buffet up there with the massive Corona. So you go up there and have a buffet with Corona. Yeah. And
Yeah, apparently we're in like a solar wind stream right now.
Yeah, solar wind stream. At least it's not a river.
Wind stream. That's our local rural internet service provider.
Yeah, Windstream. Getting their asses handed to them by the solar wind right now. So we have a couple of user comments that I wanted to read. Some good ones from episode 61, which was about the Voynich manuscript and Coral Castle. So the first one is from a listener called Jake Ackerman. He says, "Hey guys, great podcast. First one I've listened to. Two things I've found that you might find interesting. I've gone down the Voynich manuscript rabbit hole a few times, and recently a guy has said he's figured it out. The language resembles ancient Turkish or something. The video is called Voynich Manuscript Revealed 2018 on YouTube. This seems legit." Also, later you were mentioning something about gravity not fitting into the quantum physics models and stuff. Well, Eddie Leeds-Skalnin and his amazing coral castle is another thing I've looked into a lot. He says that there is no gravity, just magnets. We totally agree with that. I'm not sure if it is from his book or if he is quoted saying it, but I think it's pretty awesome thing. It's a pretty awesome thing to say. Apparently, his book has some little experiments you can do to prove this. You can get it on Amazon. Yeah, we actually saw that. He had put out a little pamphlet on magnetism, and there are some experiments on it that we are definitely going to try, or Kyle is going to try. Next comment is from Patrick Hicks. What's up, Patrick? He says, "Just finishing this episode, and Kyle mentions the nature of observing the building blocks implies a sense of humor. I tend to agree, and would you think that perhaps this implication leads us to the assumption that our entire process of discovery and thought might then be fundamentally flawed?"
Sorry. I lost you. I was doing other things in the cube.
He says,
Sorry about that, Patrick.
Kyle mentions the nature of observing the building blocks implies a sense of humor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're being laughed at by the universe all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, so he says, I tend to agree, and would you think that perhaps this implication leads us to the assumption that our entire process of discovery and thought might be fundamentally flawed? Like, in other words, if you don't take into account that something is fucking with us, then you're going to get everything wrong.
It's a good point.
Right. That brings us to the Paimon principle. Right. Do you want to talk about that, the Paimon principle? We haven't put this on the glossary yet, but this is the backwards thing that Kyle has been talking about. That we mention it. Sometimes you'll hear us say like Paimon, and it means that something we thought was apparently correct has turned out to be the opposite, or a mirror version of itself, or backwards.
Yeah. I got a nice, I was trying to put together a meme for it, and I found this t-shirt that has the evolution of man, but it's backwards. It's like, it starts out with the upright guy, and then it goes down to the monkey on the other side.
Yeah.
Which is really the way things are, if you think about it.
Right. It's the reverse image of it. It's the
Right.
Paimon principle. Paimon being one of the 72 demons of Solomon, which we'll have to get into someday, but Paimon is supposed to give you knowledge, and it's usually deceptive. Like, it looks like it's true, and it has a lot of things in it that are true, but there are things in it that make it almost completely reversed from what's really happening.
Yeah, well, you can see, like, throughout history, if you look at, the science and the development of the study of the universe, like, for example, the heliocentric model.
Yeah.
Right? We thought everything was going around us because that's what it looks like is happening.
Yeah.
And so the obvious thing to assume is that everything is going around us.
Yeah.
But then when you look a little bit deeper, you figure out, wait a minute, we're spinning.
Yeah. We're spinning,
All that
and we're
stuff.
going around everything else.
That's right. All that stuff is actually sitting relatively still. It's backwards.
Yeah.
So many times, like, just looking into, it's not just science, but, the story, our history. We think so many things about what we've done through the past. So like, oh, it's been this linear development where, we start out in butt flaps, and then our butt flaps get more and more badass until we have pants. But
Step one.
right. And you look a little bit deeper and you figure out that we had pants and they were stolen.
Yeah, that's right.
And as they got, we're wearing pants, and if the world were to be destroyed right now and all you had was one pair of pants, you'd start out with pants, but slowly over time they would become tattered, and eventually you'd end up with a butt flap.
Right.
Until you learned, again, how to make pants. That takes a long freaking time.
And you could probably spend most of your time trying not to die and then eventually dying before you made more pants.
That's right.
And it would be thousands of years before people made pants again, and they would think that they were the first pants ever in the universe.
Right.
And they would be wrong.
Right. So there's a lot of these. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head right now, but the heliocentric model is a great example.
Yeah.
Of the backwards
geocentric and heliocentric.
principle.
Yeah. So do you have news stories?
I have one.
Okay.
Alien hunting artificial intelligence detects dozens of deep space mystery signals.
All right.
Yeah.
These are more FURBs?
Yep, FURBs. But this is great. An artificial intelligence.
It's a FURB date.
Yeah, built to find evidence of extraterrestrial life, has detected 72 mysterious signals emanating from deep space.
That's the right
See,
number.
the AI is really not that intelligent, right?
Right.
Because
Here
we
we are.
realized that it was 72. It's just like, hey, check out these FURBs.
Wait a minute. So we build a non-human intelligence, and then we're like, so can we find aliens already, or what?
Meanwhile, aliens seeking AI pass by Earth.
Yeah. Aliens send out ships looking for AI. Humans build AI to look for alien ships.
But they pass us by because it's not real.
It's not really AI.
Yeah, they were like, oh, this is promising. No.
No, they didn't even count us.
But yeah, basically the more fast radio bursts discovered from FRB 121102.
Oh, so multiple from one source.
Yeah, this source has consistently been like it's one source that has done it repeatedly.
Okay.
Okay, and just recently, like this story is dated September 10th, but these findings are not that recent. Like,
Yeah.
they talked about a set of 21 being detected in 2017.
So that, I mean, we've probably said this before, but that totally destroys the idea of fast radio bursts being cataclysmic. Some kind of cataclysmic destruction of some object that then sends out a fast radio burst. If it happened multiple times from a single source,
Yeah.
it can't be cataclysmic because...
But that single source is like a galaxy, right?
Right. So
Okay, there was something. Laura found this story and showed it to me, and man, I even should have saved it. But they found like I'm trying to remember what the number was. Like hundreds of possible black holes in our.
Oh yeah, I did
like
see
this
that.
whole cloud of like full. They're saying there's basically a hidden galaxy that's within our own galaxy,
Oh wow, I didn't see that part.
and it's full of black holes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was on Newsweek, and the article was extremely annoying. Like the webpage, the Newsweek site.
Oh.
It pissed me off so bad I didn't bookmark it. But I read the story and I didn't like it. It seems like it's like it almost seemed like a theory to explain something they didn't really understand what they were finding. And there was just so much speculation that I was like, I don't know how to make heads or tails out of this.
Oh yeah.
I should have sent it to you, but
Well, what I want to know is, are there sharks in Hurricane Florence?
I don't know. A Sharknado.
It's a sharkicane. There was a story that just came out. It might be bogus, but it was claiming that there were sharks being picked up by this hurricane. I'm like, great. This is awesome. Sharkicane.
Yeah, well, at least it can provide food after it destroys everything.
Yeah. Just have sharks swimming in your front yard in North Carolina. Yeah.
Can you find that article, Brett? Newsweek, hidden galaxy inside our galaxy or something. Maybe we can. S.
Searching. Did you miss that entire conversation we had before the show?
Yeah,
Oh shit!
I was reading.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we'll just explain this on the show then. If
Inside baseball.
in some inside baseball here, folks, if he's searching for something that we're hunting around for that we can't, he'll put S on there so we know he's looking for it. So we know he's not dropping the ball.
Oh.
So then we can like subtly keep the conversation going about the same topic without anybody actually knowing until he either puts F up there for fail or puts the data up there, and then we can just like work it in.
A secret code.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
now no longer secret.
Dang it! Well, anyway, it's a secret code for a secret story about a secret galaxy
Inside of our galaxy, that's right.
made of things that nobody understands.
He says, do you remember the date of the article?
It was last week.
Last week.
I don't know.
But was it? It was found by Laura last week, or was it actually posted last week?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway. No big deal. It's just a hidden galaxy inside ours. No big deal.
A hidden galaxy.
But Laura showed it to me because she thought, like, hey, this like lends credence to your the Akashic Records, you know.
Oh yeah, the
time
idea
stasis,
that we're stuck in a
black hole
stasis
thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, she helped me out.
Wow, hear that, people? Kyle has a wife who's on his side. This guy's doing it right. Well, anyway, those were some great comments from both of you guys, from both Jake and Patrick. Thank you guys very much. And anybody else commenting, we will read them on the show, especially if they're as good as those. Those were great comments. So we're going to move on to this the topic of the glossary. We're going to go through some of these terms. And we've gone through some of them during the show before, but never really in this like a coherent manner. So if you go to brothersoftheserpent.com, you can on the upper right there you'll see there's a list of pages. It's like Home, Encyclopedia, Snake Bros Glossary, and About Snake Bros. And so the glossary is what we're going through here. And these are terms generally that we have like either come up with ourselves or have appropriated and given a different meaning. So the first one is glimpse, right? And the description on the image says, when you get a brief hint of a mind-blowing concept, but you can't hang on to it. So I'm sure we've all experienced this. Like, this happens to me usually. Like, the best example I can give that people can understand of a glimpse is sometimes, I don't know, like I'll be outside and the way, I don't know, there'll be a specific like organization of clouds. Hey, look, you found it.
Oh, cool.
There will be a specific organization of the clouds in the sky that actually will give me like if I look at it, I very strongly get the idea that I'm actually standing on a giant sphere, right? And there's this sort of overwhelming sensation of like, holy crap, I'm actually on a rolling ball in space, and then it goes away. Like, you can't hang on to it. That's a glimpse.
Yeah. Another one for me would be like thinking about ancient, like the whole story somehow of ancient man, and like, you know, the Pillars of Enoch, and like the whole, it's somehow impossibly, I'll just get this idea and grasp the vast amount of time and stories and lives of people and rise and fall and like the emotions and like all this weird, you know, the stuff that comes with it, as though I had just finished the book. Yeah. That's another form of it. It's like, it doesn't really give you all of the information. You just get this like a glimpse of the whole thing. Yeah. Somehow. It's really cool.
Yeah. So that's what a glimpse is from the. You gonna read that article?
Ah! This is what I'm saying.
This happens only once in 16 years.
Right? Screw Newsweek's freaking internet site.
This happens only once in 16 years.
Yeah, then I look at your website. Scientists think that at the heart of nearly every galaxy, including our own Milky Way, lies a supermassive black hole. SMEH. Way cooler name. Acronym. With immense gravity. These supermassive black holes are surrounded by dense clusters of millions of stars, and, according to findings published earlier this year, probably thousands of smaller, star-sized black holes that all orbit within a few light years of the center.
Not do that.
Now, astrophysicists from Eötvös University in Hungary have simulated the interactions of bodies orbiting the galactic center, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I don't want to read this whole thing.
What are you going for here?
The invisible galaxy.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. They're building these models, right?
Yeah.
So, and then in order to build the model, they have to put all these stacks of assumptions in there about what
Yeah.
black holes are and
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff. So, they're going through these. The second model describes how ancient globular clusters, large, compact, spherical stellar clusters in the outer regions of a galaxy that are typically made of older stars, spiraled into the galactic center where they were ripped apart by the incredibly powerful gravitational forces of the supermassive black hole. This populated the central region with the content of their stars. It is likely that both processes were equally important in the formation of the nuclear star cluster. Okay. So, continue. See, this is what I'm saying. They're just speculating on how the whole galaxy formed.
Yeah.
Right? The more massive stars formed disks around the central supermassive black hole over time. By contrast, they showed that lighter mass stellar objects around the central black hole were distributed spherically around the galactic nucleus.
Yeah.
Based on these findings, the scientists concluded that the thousands of black holes predicted to exist around the galactic center, which are typically more massive than stars, are hiding within the disk structure shown in the models.
Yeah.
So they haven't seen a disk structure.
Yeah.
These are just models. This prediction could have important implications for our understanding of stellar dynamics, galactic nuclei, the evolution of galaxies, and the origin of gravitational waves or ripples in the fabric of space-time. Thousands of black holes reside in a disk around the central supermassive black hole. They may collectively warp and puncture the ambient gas clouds in active galactic nuclei from which highly energetic outflows are observed. These outflows can fundamentally affect the large-scale structure of the host galaxy, even thousands of light years away.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they ever use the words invisible galaxy inside our galaxy, in the actual story.
Yeah. It's an invisible galaxy because it's a small disk of black holes supposedly orbiting.
Right, that's spherical as
Yeah.
opposed to a disk like.
No, the black holes, because they're heavy, would be in the disk. It's the lighter stars that form the sphere.
Okay.
That's what they were saying. The more massive stars form disks around the central supermassive black hole over time. By contrast, they showed that the lighter mass stellar objects around the central black hole were distributed spherically. around the galactic nuclei.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and that's supposedly has something to do. That's the accretion disk, and it has something to do with rotation.
Look at this video play. This is another video.
Yeah.
It's trying to play.
Yeah. This only happens once in 16 years. That's pretty frequent, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I knew that the current standard model theory of galactic construction was that there is a supermassive black hole at the center of every single one of them.
Right.
And that those have accretion disks, and that they become active every once in a while. Active meaning that the accretion material begins to fall into the black hole for whatever reason. Like there's a series of novas or supernovas, or there's a chain reaction of supernovas around and inside of the accretion disk, and that starts to force material into the event horizon of the supermassive black hole. And if it's enough material, the total conversion from matter to energy that takes place at the point of the event horizon causes the quasi-stellar objects that we see, quasars.
It causes quasars?
It is the quasar.
Yes.
Okay.
It is the result. It is the event that results in what we call quasi-stellar objects, quasars. That's the theory.
They're quasi-stellar because it's a bunch of stellar mass that's being ripped.
It's quasi-stellar because at first they thought they were some kind of strange star, but then they realized that they were incredibly far away based on, redshift.
Yeah.
So it's quasi-stellar because it looks like a star in some ways, but it's not. It's quasi-stellar.
Yeah.
Quasar.
So much speculation.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You got to speculate when you don't know.
Right.
But they never talk about not really knowing.
Yeah. This is what this is. We think. Except
Oh,
we
I
don't say
can't.
the
I
last
can't
part.
even. Yeah. They're saying they're models, and they're saying they could be, and
Yeah.
this could be, and that could be. But it's just. I don't know.
Basically, I'm saying it's like a giant blender.
Yeah.
Stand down or die.
Okay, so next term on the glossary, you guys all know this one, the standard model. Okay, but if you look up the standard model on Wikipedia, you're going to get physics stuff. Okay, because the standard model is a physics term. They usually are using it to refer to current particle physics.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So here we use it to mean all of currently accepted science and theory.
Yeah.
So it's a good catch-all term, the standard model. So the next glossary term, scriptard. You guys all know this one too.
But wait, on the standard model, you will run into people that if you're having a discussion and you use that phrase, they get all bent out of shape about it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They'll be like, well, what is, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, that there is
I cannot
a
do
standard
that.
model.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much the one that, whatever it is at the moment, you might not know every detail of the standard model at that very moment.
Yeah, no one knows all the details at any given moment. It's too big, but there
Right.
is a standard model,
Right.
which is what, like if you go to look up what most scientists think, you're looking up the standard model.
Yeah.
Or if you go to look up what people say most scientists think.
What's being taught in school is the standard model.
That's right.
And maybe in certain classes, they talk about maybe the standard model, the accepted model might not be right. And they also talk about the fact that it's incomplete.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the fact that there is a standard model,
Yeah.
and it is taught,
Right.
and it is the regular one that's taught.
Right. And most scientists will admit that the standard model is like along the lines of a current best guess, but they won't use those terms. They'll just say that it's the best model we have now, or something like that. And then some really good scientists will admit that the standard model is mostly speculation.
Deeply flawed.
Right, and deeply flawed in many ways. Yeah. Okay. So the next term, scriptard. You guys, most of you know this one too. The description in the glossary is someone who claims to be skeptical but is actually just a shill for the standard model.
Yeah, so a skeptic, the term being, or the idea of being a skeptic has been hijacked
Yeah.
by people that all they do is poo-poo anything that is not the standard model.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that's why Russ is often saying, like, we know that.
Yeah.
Because that, quote, air quotes, that story
do
that we
that.
all know is the standard model.
Right.
We all know that one.
Cannot do that.
So let's not all sit around and talk about it.
Yeah. We all already know it. Yeah. Exactly.
So we like to talk about
Alternative explanation.
alternative explanations, and then what a true skeptic would do is be skeptical about anything,
Yeah.
including the standard model.
Right.
So scriptard is describing the person who hijacked the term skeptic, when really all they are is a shill for the standard model.
Right.
Because they're not skeptical.
Right. They're not skeptical of the standard model.
Right.
They're skeptical of anything that isn't the standard model, which makes them.
And it's not even really skepticism
Right.
about what they just flat out deny it.
Right.
They're just
Yeah.
like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah. It's snarky, smirking, and full of fallacies. Yeah.
I would say skepticism really is not.
Yeah. The motto of skeptics was to question everything.
My point is that it's not a decision that it's wrong, right?
Right.
That's not skepticism.
Yeah.
Skepticism is unsure,
Yes. Exactly. Agnosticism.
right? You want to do your research before you just go along with what you're being told or whatever. That's
Right.
skeptic.
Yeah.
Skeptical.
Yeah. And like once you do the research, you find out that you can't go along with anything because no one actually knows.
Right.
Yeah.
So the true scientist is a true skeptic. Yeah, the skeptic does not insist upon an answer, which is exactly what scriptards do.
Right.
And it's the standard model that they insist upon.
Right. First, they like if you give an alternative explanation, the first thing they do is like treat you like you're an idiot because you don't understand that there's already an answer. And that is not actual skepticism.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So next glossary term is skirpderp. This is what skirptards do.
Yeah, they skirpderp you.
Skirptards, skirpderp.
And we often mix up those terms.
Yeah.
A lot. Like, I skirptarded that. No, you
Yeah,
didn't.
no. You skirpderped it.
You can't really skirptard something. You can be a skirptard.
Yeah.
But if you are a skirptard,
Yeah.
you are skirpderping.
Skirpderp is a verb. Skirptard is a noun.
So I screw that up all the time.
So do I. Stop skirptarding me. No, that's not how you say it.
My job here on Snake, but one of my many jobs here on Snake Bros, is to be the resident skirpderp. Oh, no,
Skirptard! Damn it! See, we both do it.
it's to be the resident
Everyone else who
skirptard.
listens to the show, I've never heard any of them get it wrong. Like all of our friends, whenever we're going and hanging out with the Snake Force, they all get the terms correctly every time, and I'm the only one screwing them up. You know?
That's
GMA's like,
hey,
GMA's like, yeah, I'm gonna skirpderp this. I'm gonna be a skirptard about this. I'm like, man, he gets it right every time.
it's the price you pay for being on the beveled edge of technology.
Skirpderpy is the adjective form. Okay, so next term. Damn it. Glad.
Everybody knows that one.
Glad is an acronym. Get lost and die.
It's something that you happily do.
That's right. Something that you hope to do. I am going to go glad.
In the woods with my trusty machete.
That's right. So, of course, the picture for that one is a skeleton in the desert.
Yeah.
Get lost and die.
So that's like the, manuscript 512 or whatever. You go out into the Amazon jungle and you find something really badass, and then you come back and you tell everybody about it, and you're like, I know it's there, I'm going back. And
Yeah.
then you never
Glad.
return.
That's right.
Because that's what they did. They
That's
went out
right.
and glad.
And they glad. Yeah.
And that happens like so many,
It apparently is a standard thing to do
Acronym.
for people that find crazy stuff.
right.
Yeah.
That acronym is just a really, really short way of referring to all of the stories where something ridiculously awesome was found, and then somebody came and reported it and had an expedition to go back and retrieve it, and they never returned.
Right.
So there's just a ridiculous amount of those.
Yeah. Next term, these eyes. So we've used this a few times on the show. So this, the description is a new way of looking at things after learning new concepts. Right. So in other words, you'd say like, I want to go back and read that book with these eyes. So like
Yeah.
once you've learned something new, then when you go and see something you've seen before, but you see it with new eyes because you've learned new things, and now you're able to look at it in a new way.
Yeah. Real world example? Is that my job here?
Yeah. Give us an example. I mean, there's plenty of those. Like, you want to go back and like read, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
That's what just happened today.
Yeah.
So, like we decided we were going to talk about go through the stories of myths on the podcast. So I went and I had years ago gotten this audiobook. It was like a 2-hour audiobook free. On the Epic of Gilgamesh, and the reader was like freaking awesome.
Oh, wow.
And I listened to it quite a few times. And
Back in the day.
back in the day, yeah. And then so today I got it again. I went and listened to it on YouTube, and it blew my freaking mind, dude. Because I was looking at it with these eyes, like
Yeah.
after all of this research into all these different things throughout history, and us, in here trying to put together all these pieces of this puzzle of our ancient past. And I'm listening to the Epic of Gilgamesh, and so many things that he's saying, I'm like, oh my god, that's this. Oh, that's that. So that was it. I was looking at it now with these eyes
Yeah.
and seeing it, understanding so much more about it, or the possibly more things about it.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for this segment. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and continue this going through the glossary right after this message from Dolman School.
Lizard again.
Hey, man. What's up?
Oh, hey, buddy. How's it going?
Pretty good. What are you doing?
I'm trying to build a thing.
A thing.
Yeah, it's just...
What are you wearing?
This is the official garb of a Dolmen engineer.
It looks like a butt flap to me.
At Dolman Technical College, we have dozens of ancient megalithic engineers ready and waiting to teach you how to harness the power of... Well, they're standing by to teach your children about... Well, they're here, and they'll teach you how to build a thing.
So yeah, I've been going to Dolmen School, bro, and I'm learning how to build this thing, and I'm pretty sure I can transmit my genetic information 12,000 years into the future.
That's really cool, but where did you get the butt flap?
Dolmen School, bro. You should go.
It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is that a puma?
It's supposed to be a lizard. Yeah, I gotta get back to the premise.
I think you should make it a puma. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Do you want to follow in the fossilized footsteps of your caveman ancestors? Dolman Technical College offers courses in cave painting, high-relief sculpting, Hind architecture, submarine megalithic construction, and more. Learn how to wear a butt flap with the best of them at Dolman Technical College. Call 1-618-108-4320 to enroll now. That's 1-360-666-727294. Call now. Dolman Technical College for a better future from the ancient past.
Streaming inside the solar wind from a crevasse-shaped coronal hole, Snake Bros returns.
Streaming directly to your podcast app from a cravat-shaped hole in the corona.
Quick, we must cross the crevasse.
From
You take the
4
high road.
million miles away.
I'll take the low.
You take the high road, I'll take the low. All right. Next term. Straight to pyramids.
Yeah.
That's where you go as soon as you have enough money to do so.
That's right. So, Russ had this book, Cryptonomicon, by Neil Stevenson,
Yeah.
and got me the audiobook. So I finally read it,
Yeah.
quote unquote.
Reddit.
But yeah, they have this term in there it's called "fuck you money."
Yeah. And also the most cigarettes.
Yeah.
There was a lot of terms like that.
Describe that one.
The most cigarettes was a shortened version of, like, basically it was implying that if we do this, we're going to end up in jail, married to the guy with the most cigarettes. And it just got shortened down to, like, where they were about to, were thinking about doing something illegal. They're like looking at each other going, the most cigarettes. It's like a warning. Like,
Yeah.
We're going to end up in jail, married to the guy with the most cigarettes.
That's kind of a great example of how we come up with terms here.
Yeah. So there's a long explanation, and it keeps getting shorter and shorter until you're just saying a catchphrase
Right.
from it. The most cigarettes.
So
Fuck you money is
fuck
kind
you
of-
money is when you make enough money to where you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So any authority anywhere in the world, you can just be like, fuck you.
Fuck you. That's right. And there was a floating amount of fuck you money.
That's
that
right.
One of the main characters in the book, like, he had an Excel window open that was shrunk down to a single cell of the Excel window, and that single cell had the current value of fuck you money based on all these different numbers in the stock market and everything. And his goal was to reach that number in his bank account.
Yeah, so straight to pyramids is kind of the same thing. It's like when you say that, it means whatever you're about to do could possibly make a lot of money.
Right.
Like, dude, we could do this, this, and this. Straight to pyramids, bro.
Which basically is like, if we do this, we could make a lot of money, and then we could use that money to go straight to pyramids. All right. Next term. Nephas. This is an original Snake Bros term.
Yeah.
A slang version of the word Nephilim refers to ancient giants or demigods.
Yeah. So really the idea was Nephas is what they would call each other.
Yeah.
Right? That's how it originated. Like,
What's up, my Nepha?
that's right. So we wanted to be in the cool club, and so we just started calling them that.
Back in the Old Testament with all my Nephas.
That's right.
Nepha. All right. Next term. Impossiblocks. This one is...
Oh, wait. Let's not rush out of that one. That also, we use that term to describe any being that's described in any mythical or religious text that is not human.
Right.
So when they talk about some god or, lowercase g god or whatever, or
Yeah.
a demon,
Yeah.
or, whatever, some power that was doing stuff that was not man, we're like,
Yeah.
Nephas.
Right.
Like,
Gilgamesh was a Nepha.
Yeah.
Or at least part Nepha.
if you were visited by a glowing being and then later you got pregnant, Nephas.
And you gave birth to a giant Nepha. Yeah.
Yeah. Gilgamesh, Hercules, Longheads.
Yeah. Longheads
The
are
Watcher.
not Nephas. I don't think Longheads were Nephas. They're short. Most of the skeletons they found that have long elongated crania are not tall. They're not giants. So I differentiate, and the Longheads are in here, so we'll get to the Longheads.
Okay, well, so you associate Nephas with giants.
With demigods, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Not necessarily giants, but demigods.
Giants among men.
Yeah.
Giants of intellect.
Impossiblocks. Stone blocks that are unexplainably enormous. And obviously the best example of that is the place where they made beer pong.
The Trillathon,
tables.
yeah. The Trillathon, which was what they called the tournament.
Yeah. the giant beer pong tournament was called the Trillathon.
It was Megalithopon.
That's right. Ballbeck means beer pong. Beck means beer. Ball means pong.
I cannot do that.
All right. Cyclopean masonry. Now, this probably should be in Snakeopedia rather than the glossary, because Cyclopean masonry is a real term. But it basically means ancient stuff built out of impossiblocks. It also is referring to, Cyclopean masonry is usually dry laid, heterogeneous, like the blocks are all different shapes and sizes. It's dry laid, meaning there's no mortar or very little. Like if the mortar is there, it's on it's more along the terms of glue that you can't see, rather than actual thick lines of mortar like we have today.
But is it Cyclopean because it was built by Nephas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cyclops.
Cyclops.
Yeah. Cyclopsy is says. Next term. The Manual for How the Universe Works, Final Edition. Which should probably just be shortened to the Universe Manual. But
But you got to put final.
you got to
edition
put
in
the
there.
whole thing in there because that's the joke. Yeah, exactly. Indicates the treatment of current science as a compendium of all possible knowledge. And current being one of the key words here, because as we all know, science is changing every day, right? So you have these people who will treat current science, whatever science says today, as being the end all be all of possible knowledge. And they will treat you like an idiot if you are going beyond that in some way. Acting as though, especially when you're going beyond it only a few, let's say that you're And this has happened throughout history. Anybody who
Yes.
looks 10 years into the future and speculates on a possible technology type or something like that, like, you know, when Kennedy was like, we're going to go to the moon, like, people thought that was ridiculous. Like, you can't fucking go to the moon. That's ridiculous. But 10 years later, we had landed on the moon. And, you know, like, decades later, everyone, like, it's so, like, common knowledge that we landed on the moon that there's a whole group of people that think we didn't do it. Like, now there's, like, this conspiracy that we didn't go. And people are like, oh my God, we totally went to the moon. But if you go back before we landed on the moon, then you have most people thinking that was impossible. And today, people make fun of the people who think we didn't go because it's, like, totally accepted. So the point is that science is constantly changing and the things that are possible are constantly changing. But there's a certain kind of person who will treat current science as though it will not ever change, and this is all that can be. Right. And they will think you're being ridiculous if you go beyond it. So that's why it's like
those people are usually scriptards.
yes,
Right. Scriptards their Bible is the manual for how the universe works, final edition.
Right. And the extended joke on the term is the manual for how the universe works, final edition, updated daily. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's the final edition. That's how they treat it. But every day it gets updated.
Right.
People have suggested we make a website. The manual for how the universe works, final edition, updated daily. Corporalite. Ancient shit made of stone. Again, this is a real term, but we use it in a slang way here. Like, you know, like advanced corporalite studies means that we're studying ancient shit made of stone.
Yeah.
But a corporalite, the actual
Shit being a slang term.
Right.
In our use of the word.
But an actual corporalite is a piece of fossilized feces. So, yeah. Dolmen. It's a thing.
Any large piece or large stone construction that is mind-boggling as to what it was for is, you could call it a dolmen.
Especially when there's 90,000 of it. Okay. Quant Suff. So the description for this one is ancient science that has been ritualized because the underlying principles have been lost. That's Quant Suff. So the story behind this is it came from an old science fiction novella or short story called The Stars, My Destination. And the story on that is not important, but there was a section in the story where the main character encounters these people stuck on a meteorite, or not a meteorite, like an asteroid, right? An asteroid. They're stuck on an asteroid, and they've got all these, like, think of a deserted island, but out in space, okay? They've been shipwrecked on this island in space, this potato out in space. And there's also all these wrecks around it. Like, so they've pulled in all these wrecked ships and kind of glommed them onto the asteroid. And they live in the, you know, rusting derelict hallways of these ancient ships on this potato out in space. And there are 3 or 4 generations down the line of the people who actually got shipwrecked. So, like, people who got stranded on a desert island, and then generations later, they're still there, right? The ship itself that wrecked was a ship of scientists, and they were going out on some scientific mission. And so they had all this scientific equipment, and they were all scientists and chemists and biologists and everything like that. So their descendants, multiple times down the line, still have all these writings and all this equipment, but they don't know what any of it's for or what any of it means anymore. They've lost the knowledge to even try to begin to relearn what all this stuff is about. And so they've
lost the meaning
of
everything. Like,
but they can all read, right? So the ability to read has been transferred because it's relatively easy to teach somebody to read. It's not extremely easy, but it's a lot harder to teach somebody about science than it is to teach somebody to read characters, right? So they all can read, and so they have all these scientific texts, but they read them like religious texts, right? Because they don't know what they mean anymore.
They're like the Zendavesta.
Right, exactly.
That's what gave me that idea, is this Quant Suff idea.
Yeah, and so, like, Quant Suff is an abbreviation that's often at the it like is included as part of chemical formula, like for how to like do a specific chemistry experiment. Quant stuff meaning is an abbreviation for quantity sufficient. But they would use the term as amen because it comes at the end of these chemistry formula, right? So you read all these things like 2 of this and 4 of that and 1/2 of this, blah, 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 quant stuff. Amen.
So when the guy finds them, how does the story go? Like, does he witness any of this activity?
Yeah, and they tattoo his face with this horrible tattoo, like it says, with the name of his ship across his forehead, Nomad. And he's got this horrible like tiger tattoo all over his face, and he wakes up and sees it, he's like, oh my god! And then he's got the, like, they like give him a wife, because they're like intent on breeding to stay alive or whatever, and like he's new genetics, but they don't know that. They're just like, here's your wife. And he's like, what? I don't have a wife. And she's like, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but she's got these sores or bruises on her arm. And he's like, what is that? And she's like, oh, I've been inoculated with something blue and something, whatever the thing is about marriage. You know what I'm talking about? It's like something blue and something true, something like that. There's a little rhyme about getting married.
So
and she's like been inoculated with this stuff. They give her shots with something blue and something else and like stuck them into her arm, and she's got all these sores. And he's like, oh my god, I have to get off this rock. And he rebuilds one of their spaceships and like tears it out of the asteroid and flies away to get away from the Quantsuff people. But yeah, they would say things like Quantsuff. There's a shaman, like the leader guy. He's like Quantsuff, very scientific, and they have no idea what they're talking about. So like one example we used in one of the previous shows we were talking about this term is like, imagine there's a huge cataclysm or whatever, and way in the future, people still go out to this rusted hulk of a car. Kyle gave this example, and they all get in the car. They have no idea what it is or what it's for, but they get in there and it's like rusted or whatever. They get in and they go through the motions of like buckling something, and then they like pretend to turn a key, and then they're like, oh, I can feel we're going somewhere. It's taking us into space,
Yeah.
They have no idea what they're doing, but it's a ritual.
Yeah. And they're all walking around with these little flat, like stone slabs.
Yeah.
And they're
Slates.
like, we must all go outside so that we can connect with our brothers and sisters.
That's right.
And they're holding their little tablets, and they're swiping their fingers
That's right.
on them and stuff.
And the people who are like considered to be shamans have 4G. Their slabs are 4G. And other people just have 3G.
Yeah. You must go outside to get service.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? That's Quantsuff, dude.
That's Quantsuff.
They're still going through the motions, but they have completely lost the meaning of
Right.
Well, not completely. Like that's another thing about Quantsuff is that like some of the meaning is still hidden in there. Like the fact that they would go outside to get service.
Yeah.
With their tablets.
Right, or that they would get in the car to go somewhere.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But they don't actually, they feel, it's like they're thinking that the car is going to take their spirit somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they may do it in they may even say that they're doing it in remembrance of the gods who would go somewhere in it. And this is like they may have just built an altar of a car or like an effigy.
Yeah.
They get in this thing and then there's the sacred key and whatever. And you have to know how to do something standard. Right. But the reason we use this term is because sometimes you'll come across this, like we're reading an ancient text, and you begin to see like this Quantsuff, like that it's Quantsuff, like the Zendavesta, that what is happening, what you're looking at is somebody who's writing about something that was actually a science that has been ritualized.
Yeah.
And you can tell by the way they discuss it, or the way they talk about it, that they're speaking about people's opinions on things, and you're like, wait a minute.
I cannot do
This
that.
looks like there used to be some science behind this, but they don't remember that, and now they're like talking about whose opinion was what or whatever. Like I've seen this in like some of the, if you're looking at like commentary of like ancient people on ancient texts or whatever, or even modern religious people, I've looked at like commentary on certain ancient texts by Christian, the old Christian fathers or the rabbis or whatever. You're looking at how they're commenting on these things across the centuries, and you see this idea that like what they're doing is discussing people's opinions on things instead of actually like talking about the science, and it was interesting.
Yeah, it's also a really useful, like it's strange how the term itself used to describe this idea is useful in like a strategy of looking at ancient stuff. So with this idea in mind, we start looking at something like, you know, the mummification burial rituals in Egypt. This is how, like I was talking about the idea about the black hole, the Akashic Records idea. Thinking about, okay, let's look at mummification, this whole process of preserving the body in a quant suff context. Like, how could that be a quant suffing of something else?
You put yourself in this like hermetically sealed box, and try to preserve yourself. And some people have considered that to be a quant suff. They don't say this because this is our term, but some people consider that to be a quant suff version of some kind of cryo sleep or something. You know, that you're preserving the body to be resurrected. You know?
Yeah. Yep. That's cool. It's just it's like, really useful to me.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the most useful.
Like in the Anunnaki stories, like if you're looking at like Sitchin stuff, I think he did talk about this. That like there's this idea that
cannot do that.
If these ancient gods are actually space people, even if they were coming from a planet in our solar system, that you know space journeys can be like prohibitively long for humans, right? So the Egyptian and other ancient culture civilizations, like the king's desire to like put their deceased bodies into a box, and then that would result in them ending up in the stars with the gods, is some kind of
quant suff,
some kind of quant suff of some sort of like space, you know, cryo sleep, right?
Yeah.
So it's very possible that if that is a true quant suffing of this idea, that the tombs themselves that they built for themselves, or at least the above ground ones, were models of spaceships. That's one of the things that Sitchin talked about. So, okay. Next term. Longheads. Ancient people who had anomalously elongated crania. So, that one's pretty self-explanatory. And like I said, I don't associate necessarily longheads as Nephas.
What is the practice called? The
skull binding.
Yeah, skull binding.
Skull binding are not long heads, right? But they were probably emulating memories of long heads. Quant suff long heads.
They wanted to be like the gods, so they wrapped their babies' heads with boards and
right. And as the Watcher is pointing out, the true long heads had only a single parietal plate, whereas humans have two. So that's like one of the best ways to tell the difference between a skull-bound person and an actual long head.
Just as an aside, I just thought of this tray panning.
Yeah, tray panning.
The cutting of a hole in the skull.
Yeah.
That could be some type of quant stuff practice because of an implant from a highly technologically advanced civilization, right?
They're just trying to open their minds.
Like, let's imagine that we had, like, let's say in our future, we get implants in our skulls that connect us, you know, like what everybody's talking about. This,
the neural net.
Yeah, you connect your whole brain to an AI thing that connects you to the internet and all this kind of stuff. And they actually have to, like, cut into your skull and put this thing in there.
Yeah.
And that becomes, like, widely done.
Yeah.
Then some cataclysm happens, but people are still doing it because they have forgotten the fact that what you're being connected to is a network that we built.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, oh, well, I need to expand my mind.
Right.
And so they're cutting holes in their heads.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if it was just the Nephas doing it or whatever. Like, so these demigods are doing it, and then after the cataclysm, the, like, rulers, you know, because, again, when you look at skull binding, it was often the quote-unquote elites of whatever civilization was doing the skull binding. It was the elites of those civilizations that were doing that to their children, because that was a sign, a symbol of being a high person, right? And, like, if you look at, like, one of the things that's always fascinated me about the whole longhead thing is if you look at elites throughout even Western history, like, they all wear these tall hats, you know, and it's like look at the like standard headgear of, like, Catholic bishops. They have these mitre things that, like,
they look like the bowling pin hats.
Yeah, they're long heads. Like, if you actually had a long head, you could wear that hat.
Oh, that should be in the glossary. Bowling pin hat.
Bowling pin hat.
Those are the Egyptian god carvings on the sides of the walls and stuff. They always have these hats that seriously resemble a bowling pin in a champagne like cooling bucket.
Yeah. I've seen them described as the like stamen of a lotus flower, but I'm like, that's totally a bowling pin in a champagne bucket. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
With a snake straw.
That's right. All right. So yeah, like, and again, on the idea of long heads, like, look at the classic depiction of a wizard. He wears a tall, pointy hat, or a witch, right?
Yeah.
Tall, pointy hat, and a robe of stars.
Yeah.
You know, so like you.
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah. So you have like a robe covered in stars because the ancient wizards were what? Astronomers. And they had long heads.
They were very wise.
That's right. They could see
In
the
the
future
ways of
in the
science.
stars. In the ways. Who are you so wise in the ways of science? Next term. Stacks of assumptions. When unfounded guesswork
cannot do that.
becomes buried under large amounts of other guesswork that relies on the older guesswork to be correct.
The Newsweek story on the invisible galaxy.
That's right.
That's why I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah, so if you make an assumption that, you know, by your estimation, you know, like using NASA math is probably 90% likely to be correct. Right? But then you make another assumption based on that assumption being correct that, again, is 90% possible to be correct. And then you keep doing that. Eventually you end up with your assumption is like has a 1% chance of being correct or less. Because if you keep stacking those, even those 90% chances on top of each other, you end up with the probability of your assumptions being correct of zero.
Yeah.
Of practically zero. It'll never actually reach zero, but it gets there pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It approaches
each successive assumption that's 90% possibly correct.
Right.
Actually, it wouldn't be. They would continue to be.
Well, if it's,
Well, yeah,
it's
if this was
90%
correct.
if the previous ones are 100%, right, which they never are. So, like, a stack of assumption is the point of the term itself is to show that, like, you can't have stacks of assumptions and pretend that they're, you know, like Brett describes them as
That it's
load-bearing.
most likely.
Yeah, Brett describes them as load-bearing holes. A stack of assumption is a load-bearing hole, right? Because, like, when you actually look at the probability of all these being correct, even if every one of them has a 90% chance, as long as the previous ones are totally correct, then you have a giant hole in your
It's bearing the whole load of your entire
right
model.
with your entire model, right? Load-bearing holes, stacks of assumptions. Okay, the Smithsonian, where mysteries mysteriously disappear. This is not usually a term that we use, but like sometimes it is, and we got
Brenner used it.
Brenner,
Perfect.
yeah. They go to the Smithsonian with air quotes. And
well, wait. Background on that is that, like, we were at the time doing a bunch of research on the giants.
giant skeletons,
Found in the U.S.
Yeah.
And there's so many. There's like thousands of news articles.
Yeah,
Of giant skeletons being found. You know, like 8 foot, lots of 8 foot, some 10, 12, 13
yeah.
foot skeletons.
Some of them wearing full suits of armor. Some of them
Yeah.
being associated with metals that are anomalous, alloys, swords. You know, metal swords that were
Copper armor, too.
Yeah, copper armor, hardened copper armor, unexplained metallurgy. Some of them associated with slabs that have unknown scripts on them.
Do that.
So,
Yeah, there's all these though, but in most of the news stories, they talk about the Smithsonian. Somebody from the Smithsonian came and like retrieved the artifacts and was taking them back to do further study,
Right.
and that was the end of the story.
Right.
And then nothing is ever heard about that skeleton ever again.
and now the Smithsonian denies that they have any.
Yeah.
Even though there's records of thousands of them being taken, quote unquote, taken there. So, one of the concepts that I have of this, first of all, I don't blame the current employees of the Smithsonian Institute because they don't know. Because if there was some kind of conspiracy being carried out. It was by longheads or whatever, but it was by people. If any actual human that was involved is long dead, right? And so current employees at the Smithsonian will have no concept of it, no idea.
Yeah, can't blame them.
Right. But in their catalog, so you can't, like, they have huge, enormous warehouses that are, like, hermetically sealed. Like, they actually build 2 walls, and in between them is a vacuum to keep, like, vermin from being able to get in to where, so they have these storage capabilities that are actually pretty good. So that they build this giant cube, and it's like
Basically, they're mummifying everything. Wrapping it in toilet paper.
and sticking it in a giant stone box. Right, they're saving it for the Nephas when they come back. But so you can't like just go you can't go through the airlock and go through their stuff, but they do have these buildings that have catalogs, tons and tons of cards that list the, but they don't actually, it's not been digitized yet, and they don't know what everything is in there. But researchers are allowed in to go through the catalogs to see, like, if they're trying to track down if they're trying to track down a paper trail on some artifact, and it's has been listed as given to the Smithsonian, but the Smithsonian didn't keep good records because it's a governmental organization, and so people have gone in there and actually found, like, in their card catalog list, giant skulls listed in the catalog, giant jawbones, human jawbones with double rows of teeth. So they don't have, nobody's found anything about a full skeleton yet, or any swords or any tablets or with script, but they have found that they actually have giant skulls, even though the Smithsonian itself says that they don't have anything like that. So, and I can't remember what it was, but one of the researchers actually gave the card number, like F469473044F4FFF, whatever it was. So, like, it has been found. Yeah. All right. That's the Smithsonian, where mysteries mysteriously disappear. Okay, next term. Butt flap. We all know this one. What primitive ancient dudes covered their butts with? Pretty self-explanatory. But that's sort of a flippant description, because the actual term, we use it in multiple ways. When we say dudes in butt flaps, what we mean is the standard model description of ancient man.
That's right.
Now, like, there are modern people that wear butt flaps. So
yeah, they're Irish.
That's right. That's what I was going to say.
Kilts.
I'm wearing my kilt.
But the traditional butt flap is made out of
animal skin.
Yeah, pelt.
Yeah.
Right. Animal skin.
Yeah.
But
it's not a kilt, it's a pelt.
So one of my favorite ways to use the term is the most advanced butt flap, or least advanced butt flap.
Yeah. The principle of the least advanced butt flap, which is that you try to figure out how they could have done, how ancient people could have done a certain thing by, like, what
the most primitive possible way they could have built a pyramid.
Right.
Right. That's what you decide they did.
Yeah.
And so you're assuming
a priori. Yeah.
Right. You're assuming the least advanced butt flap.
Right. Exactly.
Automatically.
That's right. And because of the linear progression model of human civilization.
The Church of Progress.
And the Church of Progress, yeah.
And that's a John Anthony West term.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is basically, the Church of Progress is a flippant way to describe the linear progression. Basically, you assume, the least advanced butt flap for any ancient construction. So, all right. That's the end of this segment.
Yep. Last term is snakes.
Doing our best to eliminate any quant sup wherever we find it. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you not live, as usual. Going through our glossary of terms here. We got a few more to finish.
7-4.
No!
I cannot do that.
All right.
For some reason, I always want to rap to the for music.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that. You're like, yeah.
What's up?
Snake Bros is back. Boing. 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 by. All right, so the next term is elastic universe.
Very stretching.
A Snake Bros hypothesis explaining gravity as a complex series of nodes and standing waves in the ether is the short description that I gave it.
Yeah. Basically, a catch-all phrase for elastic universe is waves.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
we'll refer to that when we'll say waves to when basically referring to the elastic universe hypothesis.
Yeah. Waves.
I just now thought of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That'd be a good one.
Yep. Yeah, that's before we had the elastic universe name for the hypothesis, we would just be like, waves.
Yeah. Everything is waves.
Yeah. All right.
Stand down or
Anunnaki
die.
people pills. Bananas, which are actually impossible. So, like, Anunnaki people pills is not something we usually say, but we will talk about bananas being Anunnaki people pills. Like, bananas are impossible because they were... Well, you have to go listen to the episode about it. There's a long explanation, but they're hybrids. They're like berries that grow on trees that look like herbs that have tubers for roots. And
They're not exactly impossible, but the fact that they were here is really strange.
What's impossible is that they were found on deserted islands all over the Pacific, and they're hybrids that can only be grown.
If you follow the standard model,
What?
that they're impossible.
Oh. Deserted islands?
Of human development.
Yeah. They're not impossible if you consider that there was an ancient advanced civilization. That's why they're impossible.
Right.
Because the standard model says that, like, this is one of the things about bananas is that I love. It's like you just throw them out like explain bananas. Script hard.
I cannot do that.
And then they give you this incredibly improbable scenario to try to explain how they were found all over these deserted islands in the Pacific, you know. That, like, very specific typhoons could have, like, taken a cutting off of one of the trees and then, like, blown it across the Pacific where it landed the right way in the sand and then grew a banana tree. And
Sounds just like my skirp derp.
yeah, exactly.
And I'm pretty sure I came
The
up with it.
first tree, no one picked bananas, and they fell, and the tree slipped on the banana peels.
That's right.
And then the roots came off
cannot
and
do
floated
that.
across the ocean and planted themselves on other islands. Yeah, that was Kyle's scripter, which is almost exactly the same. He didn't know it.
No one picked the bananas, and they fell on the ground, and the tree slipped. It's a fantastic fucking skirp derp if I've ever heard one.
All right, and the final term in the glossary is hurling humans. When ancient gods amassed human armies and threw them at each other. So, yeah, so we just called that hurling humans. And they would usually feed their human armies with Anunnaki people pills. So, because they're perfect human food. That's the other thing about bananas that are impossible, right? They can't have, like, you've got this crazy hybrid that just so happens to be perfect people food. And so the Snake Bros theory is that the Anunnaki made them for their human armies so they could throw them at each other. So, like, you fed your human armies bananas and then hurled them at other Anunnaki armies. Because, I mean, when your human armies are marching across deserts to fight the other guy who's got all the pyramids, you've got to have them to eat something, and so you give them banana chips.
Yeah.
You know?
Very light storage.
Right. Dried, won't go bad.
Yep.
You know, just need water and banana chips, and you can live forever. All right. So that's the glossary. And once again, that is it. You can go to brothersoftheserpent.com and find that that entire thing. And it's done in the style of memes, so there are pictures for each one, and some of them are pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like the glimpse picture I love. It's the guy standing in one of the bell caves of Jordan. So the Oculus is like shining the light down into the cave, and he's standing there with his arms out like, "Whoa!" He's the only bright thing in the whole cave.
There was one that we were discussing
adding to the glossary, and that was there's kind of two versions of it. I don't know, therefore temple, and I don't know,
Therefore tomb.
yeah, therefore tomb.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's the same. If it's an acronym, it's IDK :TT. Can be either one. Therefore temple or therefore tomb. And so the acronym would be like, it's like TL:DR. Too long, didn't read. Right. It's the same idea.
we were talking about acronymizing it.
Yeah. Acronymizing it.
Acronymizing it.
Acronymizing. I have no idea.
Yeah. But yeah, like
The internet has a very booming economy.
acronym. That's great. But a lot of times we'll just say therefore Tim.
Right.
And that's basically like you've got your standard model shill archaeologist, and he's kicking sand in the desert, and he stubs his toe on a pointy rock, and they start excavating it, and then a reporter finds out and goes out there and asks him a bunch of questions, and the story basically is, well, we're uncovering this giant freaking thing made out of blocks bigger than any freaking crane that we have can lift, and blah, blah, blah. So what do you think it was for? It's probably a tomb for the ruler of the city that might have been here, maybe.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Or it's a temple to the god.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. Yeah. So
Because there's a carving on there with a person holding a basket of flowers, it's probably a temple for the god, blah.
yeah, or the goddess, blah. Yeah, exactly. And really, it's also a jab at the people who built a meme to make fun of ancient aliens. They got a picture of Giorgio Tsoukalos, and they put "I don't know, therefore aliens" on it to make fun of ancient aliens
Yeah.
and Giorgio and the whole the whole ancient alien theorist idea.
Right, well, your idea is I don't know, therefore tomb.
Right. Like, it's the same thing. They're like, oh, yeah, I don't know, therefore aliens. Like, look how dumb these guys are. And I'm like, yeah, but we're both just like, yeah, you guys are like, I don't know, therefore tomb or temple.
Yeah.
And
BT Dub, what is a temple?
Yeah.
Like, go look, try to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? What is a temple?
yeah.
There is no real meaning to the word.
Right.
And if
Or they'll call it a house of worship, and then you're like, well, what does worship mean?
Right. What are they doing there?
Yeah.
So what was the example we were giving of Quan Suff, like the other day when we were talking about this? I was talking about worshiping something, like what future people would say about us worshiping.
Oh.
You remember that?
Yeah, a power plant.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we were talking about the very distinct I don't know, constructions on a nuclear power plant. Steam, where the steam comes out or whatever.
Yeah.
What the hell is that thing? It's not smoke. It's not a smokestack. It's a steam stack. I don't know what it's called. It's a temple. Okay, basically is the point. So future archaeologists will find these temples that are ancient.
I see what you mean. The towers that they have.
The towers that they have on them.
Yeah.
On the nuclear power plants.
Yeah.
They're very distinct.
Yes.
In their shape, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Bulb,
like even
looks
like
a vase.
Yes. Even like any power plant, like whether it's hydropower or whatever, you're going to have this enormous concrete construction.
Yeah.
That's full of all this metal shit.
Yeah, the cooling towers.
Right.
That's
cooling
what it is,
towers.
yeah, right.
But you're going to have all this metal stuff, and there's pumps and there's all these other things, and all that will be gone either because of weathering and corrosion, or because later on people who were not completely into the Dark Age, but were salvaging metal after some cataclysm, come in
Right.
there and tear everything down to try to make swords
Right.
and knives and tools and stuff like that. So you're going to have like this giant concrete box with all these weird divots and holes and sockets
Right.
and things into it, and it won't make any sense to somebody who later on is assuming that everybody in the past wore butt flaps.
Right, and let's say like generations and generations down the line, there is this memory that power was in this place.
Right.
And so people are going there, and then they start venerating it or whatever it is, and they carve all this stuff all over the walls or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, it may even be like an unbroken line from the engineers all the way down, because like one of the things that's most likely to survive a giant cataclysm are power plants. They are usually they have like well, maybe not the dams, but like nuclear power plants have giant earth berms built around them to hide them from the populace, because people don't like to see nuclear power plants out there in the fields, or out there in the desert or whatever. They don't like to see them. So like they build these giant earth berms around them, and then so like even if there's a flood, unless it gets really, really deep, that thing will be its own cofferdam.
Right. And
the power plant will continue to produce power for a long time. So like the engineers become the priests.
Yep.
And so on and so forth, and like they could still use the facility thousands of years later, having no idea what it was actually for anymore.
Yeah.
And you know,
so another like scenario of like how to turn it into a temple where worship happens is basically this quant stuff memory of all the people there that they were there all the time. The place was full of all these people that were doing something.
Right. Focusing on this power.
And so they were worshiping, right? They all went there to worship the god friggin' steam or whatever.
Yeah, they went there to worship the god atom.
Yeah. Exactly. The reactor is the holy chamber of God, and if you enter it, you are destroyed by God.
That's right.
So another scenario...
and you have to wear special garb.
Right.
To enter the chamber of God, or else you'll be destroyed by God.
That's right.
I mean, this is like, are we ringing any bells here?
Yeah.
Any bells ringing?
Yeah. So another thing, another way I've looked at this scenario is that, like, there's these ancient places, like we were recently talking about the manuscript 512 and the whole expedition out into the jungle and the natives.
Yeah. We're talking about this off the show.
Off the show.
Yeah. Manuscript 512 is in the show, but it's pretty far back. You have to go look
Percy
for it.
Fawcett.
Yeah.
Anyway, the natives there knew about this city or whatever, but they didn't go near it.
Right.
And they have these legends about it being like, oh, no, it's like demons live there.
Yeah, they're terrified of it. Yeah.
Right, so there's a bunch of stories like that where the natives know about some ancient site that's massive, megalithic architecture and all this stuff, and they stay away from it because you die if you go there.
Right. Anybody who goes there never returns.
So think about...
They glad.
That's right. Think about a nuclear reactor, a nuclear power plant. If in the event of a cataclysm and a bunch of people die and that thing actually goes into meltdown.
Yeah.
For possibly 1,000 years, it could be radioactive there.
Right.
And so anybody in the future that was to go there to try to do something, or if they saw it from a distance and they went there, they would not come back.
Right.
And so there would be, over time, as we forget what it was, we might have some memory that it was power, that it was powerful, or some version, quant stuff version of that, but also that it is incredibly dangerous and no one will ever go there. And so, like, civilization advances somewhere else in the world. They get on ships and they come over, and the natives tell them that they're like, "Whoa, what's that?" And they're like, "Don't go there." It's
right,
and it may be not dangerous anymore.
Right,
but it's cursed.
Yeah,
and they never go there.
Right,
do not go there, or you will die. Your hair falls out, and your teeth fall out.
Exactly. And you can find this in ancient texts and in other myths and legends of specific cities in the Middle East being cursed. Like Mohenjo-daro was one of them.
Right. But it was where the ancients went to worship God of Fire.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
It's a temple.
Temple. Yeah. Temple might be like some kind of strange etymological, like degeneration of a word for power plant. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Power plants are a good explanation for a lot of very large constructions that we don't understand. I think power plants or other factory type facilities, metallurgy.
Right. And we talked about that before, about I can't remember who brought this up. I think it was Christopher Dunn brought up the idea of like, what are the major, like the biggest projects that we have. There are for getting power. They are power plants, whether it be a hydroelectric dam, or a nuclear facility.
And we're willing to put all these resources into the construction because everyone involved knows that they're going to benefit massively from this project.
And and the community, even like if the community is willing to devote resources to it or tax dollars or whatever, because we know we're going to get something for it.
Right.
So that's why it seems like just looking at economics specifically, it seems likely that these ancient, massive stone constructions that would have taken an ungodly amount of resources and manpower to build would have, the whole community would have known that they were going to get something from it. And
it's almost like insulting to suggest that what they thought they were going to get was a tomb.
Right. For a single person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we do
Or
know
a place that they can go take more of their resources and leave them in buckets in front of a statue.
Right.
Like, that's just ridiculous. Right?
Yeah. What are you doing? I'm going to put my bowling pins in the bucket in front of the statue.
It's like these Sumerian temples. It's like, yeah, right here is the altar where the people would come and place their offerings to the goddess of blah.
Yeah.
And it's like this bucket with their the best of their crops. And it's like, they really thought the stone statue was like eating that shit?
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, the veneration of idols.
Most likely, it was some later totalitarianist asshole that was demanding that they bring it, and because they were using it.
Right. Yeah.
And those people probably didn't build the quote-unquote temple.
Right. And if you look at the Sumerian city-state structure, and this is something that Klaus Schmidt said, the guy who was the archaeologist in charge of Göbekli Tepe. Okay, so here we have the Paimon principle. For a long time, the standard model of archaeology said that the city came first and then the temple. Okay? Klaus Schmidt, who was, in most ways, a standard model archaeologist, admitted that Göbekli Tepe, because, okay, and again, this comes from a standard model, like, picture of Göbekli Tepe as a place of worship. Right? They found no evidence that anybody lived there. Okay? So they're like, okay, this wasn't a...
Must be a place of worship.
Right. But since it's so far back in the past, according to the standard model, this is pre any kind of settlement, any kind of large settlements, right?
So they were nomadic.
They were nomadic. So he was basically saying that the temple came before the city. It's the reverse of what the standard model has considered for since archaeology began.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's backwards.
Right. And so if you look at the Sumerian city-states, the center of every single one of those cities that they had was this enormous megalithic constructed quote-unquote temple, a ziggurat. And it was always the house of their local god, their local
Right.
Nepha.
Nuclear power. Yeah.
Right. Or whatever.
The god
it
of
was.
fire lived there.
Right. It was the house of God. So when you go in there, there's these enormous doors and there's these huge rooms and so we still have this in our cathedrals today. You've got these giant rooms and they're sort of awe-inspiring. But you can also see that, you can also kind of looking at alternative ideas. If the Nephas were something real, that their houses would need to be large because they were large.
Right.
Right. And so when you went to a house of God, there was actually a god in there, like a lowercase g, some kind of, as Suklos would say, like a flesh and bone being. He was not a spirit.
Flesh and blood.
Right.
Extraterrestrial.
Yeah. And so you look at these Greek myths or whatever about the whim of the gods, right? And how they would you go in there and you're going to ask, you want to ask for something, and they may grant you their daughter and and half the jewels of the kingdom, or they may just slaughter you and eat you right there. You don't know. It's the whim of the gods. And so people would bring them offerings, and the standard model idea is that the priests were carrying on this enormous charade the whole time. Most standard model sculptards are also atheists, right? And atheists in the sense that they don't believe in a uppercase G or lowercase g god or any kind of spiritual anything, but they also don't believe in aliens or extraterrestrial beings or Anunnaki or anything like that. Okay, they're standard modelists. So their picture of the ancient world is that everyone was an idiot and they were all being fooled by the priests all the time.
Yeah. Wow.
Talk about...
This is
and
why
they're the only ones that have figured this out.
Right. This is why all of the depictions of how they built these sites with the least advanced butt flaps have them all in extremely low-tech butt flaps.
Yeah. They were all superstitious morons that could build megalithic temples with extremely primitive tools. And they were doing it for priests who were fooling everybody throughout all the ages. It's really, when you look at it like that, it's a freaking ridiculous story.
Yeah.
people are stupid and smart in multiple ways, but like the idea that I don't know. There's something. I think that the alternative. Basically, what it comes down to is we all know that story.
Yeah.
No one needs to tell us that story because we've all heard it for our entire lives, and so, like, discussing alternative possibilities is actually scientific, unlike what a scriptard will tell you.
Yeah. And it's way more exciting.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun.
Yep.
Because the other thing about the standard model is they act like they know all this already, that it's set in stone, so to speak.
Yep. God dang it, scriptards!
So that brings me to another concept that I want to talk about now. Like we've gotten requests for this occasionally. Like what are some standard style arguments that people will make? Scriptards will make what standard scripterps, right?
Oh wait, real quick.
Okay.
The Watcher. The same etymological roots lead to the temple of the head or temporal bones. So, is the temple a place of the mind?
Yeah. Before that, he says the temple in Latin meant open or consecrated space. Whatever consecrated means. It's like hallowed ground. What does that mean? Hallowed, halo.
There's a ring of light
Yeah.
around your power plant. And it shines with glory.
Which
It
is your spaceship.
sacred. We must worship it. What do you mean?
Yeah, all these words that have circular definitions. What is something that is sacred? It is something that is hallowed. What is something that is hallowed? It is something that
Do
is
not do that.
what's the other word? Sacred. Sacred, holy, hallowed.
Yeah.
They go around in a circle. Yeah.
But I like the idea of worship being like they focused on a specific idea, right?
Yeah.
So like all the engineers in the power plant are worshiping
Right.
the power plant. That's
Yeah.
I mean, if you were an alien just arriving from Mars,
You might think that they were worshiping the
you
power
might
plant.
think they were all in there worshiping.
The other
power
explanation is that a worship is a giant metal construction designed to blow things up.
plant. Yeah.
It's a worship.
Yeah.
So when you go into a temple, it's a worship. Because it's the spaceship of the gods.
He says, Brett, an open space is made holy because God came down to the giant open space in his ship and made it holy. No, it's because he left in his ship and made it whole.
Yeah.
Left a hole.
Left a hole. So now it's holy. And his ship it was a rocket, and so it probably burned holes and everything. So, again, I'm going to go with this like in a sort of a what's the term? Like this is an argument style that I see all the time, and I hear it or I read it. People making this argument, like a basic example is when people are talking about ghosts. Okay, now first of all, ghosts itself, the term comes with a huge stack of assumptions that it's a dead human, right? Like we don't know that. Like a ghost does not like ghostly activity does not necessarily mean it's the spirit of a dead person. Like we don't know what it is, right? The experiences that people have that they associate with ghosts is something. I believe that people see and experience something, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a dead human that they're interacting with.
Yeah.
But one of the things you'll see Scriptards saying about ghosts is that ghosts can't be real because if we decide that ghosts are real, then unicorns and fairies are also real, and everything else that people have made up throughout the centuries is also real, and like all of a sudden we lose all of reality to speculation and
A bunch of fantasy.
a bunch of fantasy, right? That is not science. Evidence for ghostly activity does not mean unicorns are real.
Yeah.
But I'm serious. People will say this. Like, no, if we decide that
So
ghosts...
that's like the fallacy of composition. right?
Exactly. It's the fallacy of composition. They're trying to say that we can't accept that ghosts are real because if we do, then aliens and unicorns and fairies are all real.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Evidence for aliens is not evidence for fairies. Maybe. I mean, it could be. If fairies are aliens. So, like, I just want to point out that, like, that kind of thinking is common. And the reason it's common is because it actually isn't thinking. Okay, this is... There are professional skeptics. Professional, quote-unquote, skeptics. Okay, they're actually scriptards. Richard Dawkins, Jason Colavito, I can't think of the other name. I don't really know most of their names, but those are two of the most famous ones. These guys do this for a living, okay? They write books. They have conferences where they go there and be scriptards. And, like, they hang... And it's crazy. Like, look at...
Whoa. Your blood pressure's getting high, man. You got a sweat drop. It's coming down.
Yeah. Yeah!
What do they hang at their conferences?
Yeah, they hang these giant tapestries of one of the main skeptics. What the hell's his name? He was the magician, the stage magician.
I don't know.
James Randi. Okay, James Randi. I've talked about this in one of the earliest shows, like episode 12 or something like that. James Randi was a stage magician. Okay.
So he tricked people for a living.
That's right. He tricked people for a living, right? And then he made a name for himself by videoing him, like, swinging at low-hanging fruit. Okay, so he went after some people who, like, his main deal was he went after these, like, obvious, like, fraud, quote-unquote, psychics. Okay, now there's fraud in everything, but in the business of telling the future, there's a lot of fraud because people want to believe, right? This is why there's the whole joke from the X-Files. I want to believe. There's the picture of the UFO, right? And it's like, I want to believe. And, like, Mulder had this poster in his office. And it's kind of a joke, okay? It's a joke on, like, don't do this.
Yeah.
Because if you want to believe this, you're going to be tricked easily by fraudsters.
Confirmation bias.
Right, confirmation bias. But this is true in everything, not just alternative stuff, right? If you want to believe something, it's going to be easy to trick you into believing it, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be easy to defraud you. This happens to people on the stock market all the time.
You can easily reverse it by saying, if you want to believe that it's not true.
Right. If you want the disbelief, then it's going to be easy to trick you into believing it's not true. So James Randi made a name for himself as a skeptic, okay, by, like, very publicly making fools of these quote-unquote psychics who are frauds, okay? It's low-hanging fruit, right? Yes, there's fraud in this, like, but there are people who can really do it, too.
Do that.
And Randy didn't go after any of the people where there was evidence that they were actually able to do it, okay? Because Randy himself is a trickster. That's the point. So if you look at and I don't know if they hold these skeptic conferences anymore, but they used to have them, and, like, there are these gigantic, like, really creepy looking tapestries hanging, like, they're giant, they unroll them, like pictures of Hitler that's what they look like. They're just long red and white of Randy, and I'm just like, that's really creepy. You know, so all these, like, atheist skeptics are going there to worship this bearded guy in the sky.
Yeah.
Do not believe. Do not believe. Right. We do not believe.
Yeah. So, getting back to what I was saying, like, there are these big name skeptics who have made a lot of they've not made a lot of money, but they have made a living being scriptards. And they, first of all, I don't think they're stupid. Okay, this to me makes them more deeply disingenuous than if they actually believe what they were saying. I think that they know that they're using fallacies all through their arguments. I think they're aware of that. They're not idiots. Dawkins himself is a scientist, right? Like, he's got a PhD in something, biology. I don't know what it is. Maybe physics. I don't know. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson does the same thing. He's got a PhD. He's a physicist. That's not easy to do, right? But he's, like, filling his arguments with fallacies. You know, like the whole thing about like, yeah, and we talked about this as well. Like the whole thing about, you know, questioning the theory of evolution is like questioning the theory of gravity. That is so deeply disingenuous because there is no theory of gravity and he knows that. First of all. Second of all, he's trying to conflate the theory of evolution with the phenomenon of gravity.
Yeah. Something that we can witness every day, all the time.
All the time. And no one is actually
study it. And
right, exactly.
Do experiments with it.
And yet we have no theory for it because we don't understand it at all.
Right.
Right. So here, this is the thing. Evolution, like I've been thinking about this because I was thinking about doing this topic on this show. And I've been thinking more deeply about this whole conflation of theory and phenomena. And like, what's interesting, like aside from all the skeptic stuff, about evolution versus gravity and the fact that we have a theory for one and no theory for the other is that one can be observed by everybody all the time and the other can't.
Yeah.
So we have this huge theory that explains everything about the one that nobody can actually observe.
Right.
And then, but the one that everybody can observe and everybody can easily do experiments on, there is no theory for because it's too easy to disprove whatever theory you've got.
Because you can observe it.
Because everyone can observe it.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
So going back to like the whole, you know, questioning the theory of evolution is like questioning the theory of gravity. Like think of how deeply disingenuous this is. Neil deGrasse Tyson, having a PhD in physics and theoretical physics, knows the difference between a theory and a phenomena. Like, and he knows the difference between the law of gravitation, the universal law of gravitation from Newton, because there's a difference between a scientific law, capital L, and a scientific theory, capital T.
A theory would explain the law.
A theory attempts to explain the underlying mechanism behind it. There is no theory. Like, if you go to the website of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the ass. Okay. If you go to their website, they have a thing on theories and laws and hypotheses or whatever, and they say that their understanding of gravity amounts to a working hypothesis. Okay.
Yeah.
So they themselves admit that there is no theory of gravity. I think they're stretching it, saying that there's a working hypothesis. There isn't, because a working hypothesis requires that it can be tested, and we don't have anything like that yet.
Yeah.
Because describing the mechanism of gravity would require that we can test whether or not that mechanism is there or not, and we don't have anything that does that.
Yeah.
You know, Einstein, like what they're talking about really is Einstein's description of space-time being bent by gravitic forces.
There's nowhere you can really test it.
Right. We can't we can see that
we saw something behind the sun when there was an eclipse. Theory tested.
Right.
Hypothesis tested.
Right. Yes, exactly. You're talking about gravitic lensing. Like the assumption that the observation of gravitic lensing proves any mechanics of gravity is not true. It does show us that something is happening, that something is being bent, or that something is acting like a lens to pull the light from something behind a body around the edge of it, but that doesn't tell us what's making the bend.
Right, it doesn't necessarily mean space-time is being bent.
Right, and it doesn't tell you what's bending space-time.
That's true.
Yeah. So the point is that Neil deGrasse Tyson, who knows the differences between a scientific law, a scientific theory, and a hypothesis, he knows that there is no such thing as a theory of gravity. Now, he's not a biologist, so he doesn't ever understand evolution at all, right? That's fine. He has the same understanding of evolution as a layman, as far as I'm concerned, because he's a physicist, not a biologist, right? So, but unlike a layman, he can be assumed to know very precisely the difference between a law that gives you a mathematical formula that allows you to predict what a phenomena will do, as opposed to a theory that explains how the phenomena works. Okay? So trying to conflate the completely unproven and unprovable theory of evolution and unobservable phenomena, if it even exists, of evolution with a phenomena that we can see all the time and pretending that it's a theory that is classic scriptard, and it is incredibly and deeply disingenuous.
Yeah.
It is like playing on the assumption that people don't know the difference between these things, and then trying to trick them into not questioning something that should be questioned because there's zero evidence of it, and you can't observe it.
Yeah.
So, like, you'll see, like, I don't even know what to call that fallacy. Except for the WTF fallacy. It's like
The amalgam fallacy. All of
them combined together. Right. All right. /end rant.
The Watcher says false cause.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's posted the Thou Shalt Commit Logical Fallacies poster. And I've actually had Skirptards tell me, like, when I'm like, you're using this fallacy and that fallacy, they're like, get rid of your fallacies poster. And I'm like, what? I don't have a fallacies poster. And I had to go look it up. Oh, there's a poster that they put in every school to try to keep people from using them, and you're using every single one of them on the poster. So you need to actually get a fallacy poster and start looking at it before you make arguments. And stop telling me to get rid of mine, because that's destroying your arguments.
I cannot do that.
Because I don't have one. All right, that's the end of this segment.
Wow, that was.
I gotta take a break.
Do that.
Fucking Skirptards.
And unstoppable pursuit of pyramids by two serpents who are also kin brothers of the Serpent Podcast. We're back to talk about things that are
There we go. So I just came back from the top. Just brought me some coffee. My first portal didn't work. I had to do a second one. It's too far away.
I can delete that one. Too late.
It's too late. Hold on, let me try it again. Okay, I'm back.
Okay. All right,
Okay,
so I have a. I don't. It's not really a fallacy. This is just a. Yeah. Keep that fork tongue inside your mouth. All right. So, one of the things that I've run into in conversations with people is I don't know what it would be called, but like suggesting, for example, that the pyramid is not a tomb, and then the argument is like
you're suggesting it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Well, but they found all these other pyramids everywhere with burials in them, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so like, and then you have all of these archaeologists or whatever. Everybody is they all agree.
Yeah.
That this is
The
what it
consensus.
is. So
yeah,
that's what it is. It's like a consensus thing.
a consensus fallacy.
Okay. Consensus fallacy.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many people think it. That doesn't make it right.
Yeah. And it happens in many different things, like the.
Yeah. So the Watcher is saying that I like the original Latin. Can you find the Latin names? But bandwagon is what they call the fallacy. But there are Latin terms for them that I like better.
Yeah. So they're like in any of the sciences, right? You say like, well, what if this thing is this other way? And it's like all these scientists have been dedicating their lives to it, and you know they've done all this, and it's like, yeah, but like it doesn't seem to be that way. Like,
Yeah.
you know, but it's like, oh, they wouldn't. I don't know how to describe this. It's like assuming that other people that you don't know in this whole group, because they all agree that they must be right, because
Yeah.
they're just genuine people really doing genuine work, and they're all. It's like you don't know that about them,
Right.
and I'm not saying that all of them are liars either,
Right.
in this scenario. But it's like just because all of these people agree, you can't put your trust in the idea that they're all doing good work.
Yeah.
And that maybe some of them aren't even really doing work in this one area. They're just assuming that the work that the others did were good. Like,
Yeah.
if everybody does that,
Yeah.
then you end up with everybody believing that, you know, the universe goes around the Earth or whatever.
Right. The fallacy in that situation you're describing is attempting to prove your argument wrong by claiming that other people know that you're wrong.
Yeah, there you go.
So like, it doesn't necessarily. They're not necessarily wrong for thinking that scientists are doing good work. What they're doing wrong is trying to say that proves you wrong.
Yeah.
That isn't a valid argument. A valid argument actually goes into the details, like takes all of your arguments into account and tries to look at them and actually have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
The fallacy in that sense is to just try to claim that you're disproved because a bunch of other people know things and you're not agreeing with them. That's the fallacy.
Okay. Yeah. And that, I feel like we're being, like with the whole man-made global warming.
Yeah, so appeal to authority is what that's talking about.
Appeal to authority.
Yeah.
So with the man-made global warming thing, that is happening like on a massive scale. Like the whole, like the political scenario with that is like pushing the idea that all of the other people are telling you that if you don't agree with this, you're wrong.
Yeah. Right.
And I mean,
so that the Latin terms, argumentum ad popularum, argumentum ad veracundium, I'm not sure if I'm saying those right, but that's the appeal to authority, and the ad popularum is the popular opinion or bandwagon, or ad numerum, like everybody believes this, so it must be true. Like, yeah, everybody used to, like, you know, and the same people will then turn around and say, well, everybody used to think that the Earth was flat, or everybody used to think that, you know, to like support some standard model thing. You know, like to show you that, like, just because everybody believes something doesn't make it true or whatever. Like, yeah, dude, I know that. That's why just because everybody thinks that the pyramids are tombs doesn't make them tombs.
Yeah.
And like appealing to authority is classic. You know, like throwing out a bunch of scientists and then claiming that they're correct is like, there's nothing wrong with citing the work of scientists, like citing it in your argument, like saying, okay, so here's what he felt like. Go look at this and this paper. He found this and this and this, and this is the specific part of his paper that I'm talking about. But you use that to continue your argument rather than just saying this guy says it's this way and therefore I'm right.
Yeah.
Or therefore you're wrong.
I guess for me, it's like the more I looked into specific scientists and what they studied and what they found, the less I was comfortable just assuming that all scientists were figuring stuff out. Because like every individual one is like finding something that disagrees with this other one, and then they're like, oh, and they go back.
The scientists were baffled when they found whatever. Yeah,
and that's great. Like I love doing that. I love like following a specific person's research or whatever, like Feynman, for example.
Yeah,
but the fact that they are finding new things, and then repeating experiments that had been done and assumed by other scientists.
Yeah.
And then they repeat the experiment, or like Feynman would repeat the experiment and get different results.
Yeah.
And that would just throw everything back up into the air.
Right.
And it's like all this stuff. So like the more I looked into that, the more it's like you can't just say, well, there's a consensus of scientists that agree that man-made global warming is the cause of the warming of the globe right now.
Right.
Like you can't.
Anthropogenic climate change. Yeah.
Right. I can't comfortably use that as like, okay, it's true.
Right.
Because if you follow any single scientist's work, if they're good scientists, they're always doubtful, repeating experiments. They're not sure. They don't know.
Right.
They're getting different results. So there has to be more research, and it's It's like.
And then when you read a bunch of research papers that have nothing in them but models. I mean, we were talking about this at the beginning of the show. The models are full of their assumptions.
Right.
They have to be. You can't build a model without putting your assumptions into it.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's just to use that and to say, okay, because they built this model and that's what they think is most likely, it's true.
Right. That's the fallacy.
But just for me personally, like my experience with talking with people about this is like does the whole group thing. It's like, well, the scientists have all been doing this, and I'm just like, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
Right.
Get on board with that, because they don't, like, looking at them individually, they all go all over the place and they argue with each other, and they're you know.
Yeah, this is so like I'm trying to think of a okay, so there's another axiom here that I like. Anytime there's a double standard, there's also a hidden agenda. Right?
Yeah.
Whatever that hidden agenda may be, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a giant conspiracy, but there is a hidden agenda, whatever the agenda is, whether it's political or, you know, academic or monetary, whatever. Okay? But a double standard implies a hidden agenda of some kind or some form. Right? And we see this, like we've talked about this in terms of the parapsychological research. Right? There's this incredible, like, there's these attacks against it and they hold them to these like incredibly stringent standards that are actually the standards of science itself. But those same stringent attacks and scrutiny is not applied to every other science that's accepted as being a legitimate science, whereas parapsychology itself and its own and the subject of its study is not accepted as legitimate by a lot of people, by the people who are attacking it. So they will go dig through all the, like, what are the rules of science, and like how can we like hold these people to all these rules, and then they like say, well, you got to do this, and you're
or they throw out your entire study because this one thing wasn't.
Yeah, that's composition,
precise,
fallacy of composition. Yeah, like,
or no, I mean like one of their practices was not. Yeah, okay, fallacy of composition. I got
like trying to claim the entire paper is wrong because there's some flaw in some methodology in there is ridiculous, right? But or trying to claim that somebody's other paper is wrong because they wrote a paper when they were an undergrad that had some flaw in it.
Right.
It's fallacy of composition. But what I'm saying is that they'll, like, because parapsychology in the field of it is so, like, is not an accepted science really, that it's under this constant attack.
And they're holding them to these ridiculous standards that they don't hold themselves to.
Right. There's a double standard, which means there's a hidden agenda. What that is, I don't know, but it's some form of skirp derping, like shilling the standard model.
The most obvious hidden agenda to me would be that they don't want that to be true.
Right.
The agenda is to what's the word? Destroy it.
Yeah, but why don't they want it to be true? Because then unicorns and fairies are true and aliens? That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, there's the hidden agenda, you're right, is like the obvious one. The first answer
you can use an easier one, then that would be like if the pyramids were not tombs and they were built like far earlier than when they thought they were built, that destroys all of the rest of their work. Right? They have to rewrite all the books, all the stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the hidden agenda, is to not let that happen.
Right. Like a house of cards fallacy.
But it could be. I'm not saying it is. It's just like seems the most likely.
Right. So, okay, I see what you're saying. So that's in a sense saying that unicorns and fairies would be true then, because they're basically saying like, if that's true, then everything we think is true is not true, and that can't be right.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, exactly. We have to rewrite the whole model.
Right. So, yeah. So okay. So the Watcher is pointing out argument to ignorance, or argumentum ignorantium. I think it's ignorantium. Argument to ignorance, which is basically true because it hasn't been proven false. And I see that a lot too. Like, well, no one has disproven this. So, Now that's used on both sides. I see people on both sides. Well, you haven't disproven that this is real, so it could be real. Like, well, yeah, okay, it could be.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that like, there's the whole like axiom of like, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Well, what he's saying here is that you're assuming that something is false simply because an argument that someone has offered is invalid.
That's the argument to logic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the argument to ignorance is true because it hasn't been proven false.
Okay.
Like, we don't know that it's not true, therefore it is.
Yeah, that's not right.
No,
it could be true.
Right. That's why like the other side of that is absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. In other words, like, just because we haven't found any evidence for this doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah. So what would be like that makes me think of this quote unquote lost civilization, right? There is evidence that there was a lost civilization, but they've already put that evidence into their model.
Right.
And so they exclude that evidence from the idea.
When they're like, there's zero evidence of an ancient advanced civilization, and we're always like, except for those giant pyramids that are standing right in front of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they'll take any evidence and fit it into their model that says there's no lost civilization.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
So that they can continue to say there's no evidence
for a lost civilization, and then imply that means there isn't one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what the fallacy... I don't know if there's a fallacy of like... I mean, like, people get things wrong all the time, so you can't say... It's not fallacious.
Well, I'm not specifically talking about fallacies. I'm just talking about arguments that people use. Like, that was your original premise, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like common arguments that you run up against with people.
Yeah.
I don't know the fallacies.
Yeah, you're right.
But
you're right. That doesn't necessarily have to be a fallacy, but but
it's used all the time.
Yeah,
right.
That there's zero evidence for an ancient advanced
Göbekli
civilization.
Tepe is a place of worship. Therefore,
By people in butt flaps.
Right.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's no evidence for a lost civilization.
Right. Even though it is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my point. Is like that.
Right. So you're saying that they take this evidence of an ancient lost advanced civilization and socket it into their
Right. They make
least
up,
advanced butt flaps model, and then say that there's no evidence for an advanced civilization in the
Right.
ancient past.
So that was what Klaus Schmidt was up against. He's like, how can this possibly be? Well, it must have been nomadic tribes.
Right.
Therefore, there's no evidence for a lost civilization.
Right.
Right. Whereas Graham Hancock's argument was like, well, this actually is the evidence for a lost civilization. But you're trying to say that they invented agriculture and megalithic architecture, and they were nomadic.
And
butt
right
flaps.
angles, and the very idea of building anything in the first place
Right.
all at once. Yeah.
Right. and you can fit that into your model, really? That
Yeah.
fits?
Yeah, it totally fits.
Because Klaus Schmidt was like, he asked him directly, he's like, so you don't think that this is going to rewrite the history books? And he's like, no, this fits into the model, right? Well, you can just decide that anything fits, right?
Right.
And if you find a massive pyramid that has no one buried in it, you can decide that it was a tomb, and then it fits.
Right. The thing about Göbekli Tepe is before they found it, they would have ridiculed you for implying that something like that existed.
Right.
So then when they find it and then they jam it into their model and then ridicule you for thinking it's anything but what they say it is ridiculous.
Right.
But that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that always happens, not always, but often happens with evidence for ancient advanced civilizations is all work on it is stopped by some kind of governmental action, usually by people who don't want it to be found. So like the perfect example of this is Gunung Padang in Indonesia, right? The people who stopped that work being done by a geologist who was a PhD and well respected in his field were archaeologists from Indonesia. So archaeologists were saying, use the power of government to stop the work being done on that place by claiming that they already knew what it was and they didn't need to dig it up.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can fit it into your model before you ever excavate it.
Right. Because you know that you can't fit it into your model if you dig it up.
That's exactly what happened with Göbekli Tepe for
Yeah.
years. They saw the tops of the T-pillars sticking out of the ground, and they fit it into their model. They knew what it was.
Right, by assuming it was like a medieval graveyard.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they didn't need to dig it up.
Right.
So dig it up.
Right. So the other thing about people who claim
cannot
that there
do
is no evidence for an advanced civilization, you have to remember, and you can remind them of this. It hardly ever works. I try it, but it doesn't work. You have to remember that evidence will not be found if you're not looking for it, or it's rarely found. Right.
Yeah.
If you it's and not so most of the time
If you're not looking for something, right?
Yeah. But it's worse than that, because people who are quote unquote educated in this field will not just not look for it, but they will know that it isn't there.
Yeah. That's sort of like a form of confirmation bias that's before the fact, before you
A
find
priori.
it. Yeah, a priori. There you go.
Yeah, a priori is assuming you I always flip out about the backwards way, the Paimon principle of the assumption of least advanced butt flap. You know, you're going to excavate some new archaeological site, and you have a priori decided you already know the advancement level of the people who built this thing before you ever excavate it and look at it.
Yeah.
Okay? You have assumed you know how advanced they were, or not advanced they were, and then you attempt to cram that structure into that picture.
Yep.
Instead of doing what the actual scientific thing would be to do, which is to dig out the structure, study it, and then decide how advanced the people were based on the structure itself.
Right.
That would be the scientific way to do it.
Yeah, if that were being done, then all that crazy mathematical shit they've discovered in the Great Pyramid would be just part of what we know about the ancient Egyptians and their technology.
Right. Right.
It's not. None of it. All that stuff is considered to be accidental because
Exactly.
before they ever found out any of that stuff about the pyramid, they had already assumed they were a bunch of guys in butt flaps.
Right.
So when it was finally discovered that pi and phi and all of these mathematical principles were in the actual construction of the pyramid, they're like, that was an accident.
Right. So earlier today, Brett and I were talking about this with some other people, and he posted this Snopes article on the idea of like the question of like whether the speed of light is somehow included in the GPS coordinates in the Great Pyramid. And of course Snopes says, well, yeah, they're there, but it's a total coincidence, right? That's basically what they say. But there's this long thing in there, and they talk about how
they moved the prime meridian.
Right, in 1882, which is before we knew the speed of light.
But why did they move the prime meridian?
Yeah. The point is, or 1884, he says. So the prime meridian was moved in 1884, which puts the point at which the latitude and longitude equal the speed of light into the point where the king's chamber is in the Great Pyramid before we knew what the speed of light was. So it's hard to claim that that's a coincidence, especially because the speed of light is also found in another way in the Great Pyramid by doing the whole 2 circles inside and outside of the base. So claiming that it's a total coincidence that it's found in there twice in totally different ways is speculative.
Yeah, there's also, I thought there was another way that and this is in meters, right? Yeah, I thought there was another way where that kind of shows that they actually had the meter.
Yeah. Well, there's
something about the pyramidion.
There's a pyramidion for the Red Pyramid. They think it was for the Red Pyramid.
Yeah.
That's exactly a meter tall. Like
Yeah,
from the base to the tip of the pyramidion is exactly a meter. Which implies that they knew what the meter was.
Yeah.
Now, the meter itself was originally, well, according to like standard model history, the meter was derived by finding the polar circumference of the Earth and then dividing it by some number. I can't remember what that number was. So it's an Earth-based measurement,
But that measurement
it's
is
a geometry.
due to the science of astronomy,
Yes.
right? And this is what I was going to suggest. I don't know this at all because I haven't looked into the reasons why they moved the prime meridian, but I bet you it was a bunch of astronomers that were like, it needs to be over here. You see what I'm saying? Like that is totally an astronomical based thing of where to put the prime meridian,
It could also be based on ancient maps. Brett was suggesting that.
which would be based on astronomy.
Exactly.
My point is that no
He
matter
was-
where, yeah.
His implication for the reason for the Great Pyramid having the speed of light in its GPS coordinates, even though when the prime meridian was moved to where it is now, we didn't know the speed of light, is because people, the Masons who were doing this, the Freemasons who supposedly have carried this ancient information,
Yeah.
were the ones responsible for moving the prime meridian.
But if you are studying astronomy and like we've talked about before, like all these things connect. So if you're studying astronomy, you figure out something, and then some ancient site later shows you the same stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's because they were doing astronomy, right?
Right.
Like if you're doing good astronomy, you're going in one period of time,
You're going to find the same things.
and then you lose it, and then another period you start doing good astronomy again, and you start doing things based on astronomy and mapping things based on astronomy. You're going to start finding stuff from this other like
I see what you're saying.
astronomically advanced civilization.
Yeah.
That was the point.
Or you may.
So it could have been moved based on the ideas of modern astronomers who are probably studying ancient history also.
Right. That was the idea of because these people were Masons, they were doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, whatever people think of Masonry, there is a core masonry of mythology and legend that has been carried from the ancient past that has hidden knowledge in it.
Yeah.
You can't really argue with that. I mean, you can, but you're wrong.
Come on now.
I mean, you can argue with it all you want, but you're totally wrong. Because all these other people say that you're wrong. So, I don't know.
I know.
I don't know, like,
It's cool, man.
I don't know what else to say about scriptards except fuck them. Not really. Like, it's better to laugh at them. Again, remember that they usually have a hidden agenda of some kind. And a lot of times they're personal. There's this. We all know this kind of person. The kind of person who doesn't feel smart unless they are feeling like they're making someone else look dumb.
Yeah.
And like that's why they're so. Okay, I shouldn't say this about all of them because I don't want to be painting with a broad brush here. But like the professional skeptics, just go read some of their. You can go read their articles online. Go to Rational Wiki and just look at anything on Rational Wiki. It is like so unbelievably nasty, snarky. You know, it's incredibly condescending. And it's like there's this attitude of like, we're smart and you're not. And anybody who believes this stuff is dumb and that makes them feel smart. Like, you know, and so there's this like, that's one of the reasons why the best thing is just to laugh at them, because that's something deep-seated in their psyche that you're not going to solve. Yeah. You can't actually, they're not there to argue with you. They're there to feel smart.
Yeah. I don't get any pleasure out of arguing with I don't really, arguing is not fun.
Yeah.
Debating is, you know.
Yeah.
Having a discussion, whether you agree or not, and talking about reasons why you think the way you do is fun.
Yeah.
And interesting. But just like freaking trying to kick someone's ass is, I don't know. It's just, I'd rather make jokes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But that reminded me, didn't you say something about you had something about logic and reason and whatever?
Yeah.
Or is that for another show?
No. Like the logic and reason thing was basically going along with the whole like, if ghosts are true, then so are unicorns and fairies. Like that is not logical or reasonable. But okay, but the terms logic, reason, and rational are used by these same kinds of people. You know, like they'll say that using logic, like, you know, that like just by using logic, you can say that like ghosts aren't real. That's not true.
Yeah.
Logic does not mean anything that conforms to the standard model. Reasonable or reason, like, so, you know, what's his name? The Ancient Aliens guy, the original German or Austrian dude.
Yeah. Von something. Something Von something.
Wow, that's incredibly cliche there. Yeah. That's racist, bro. He's German. His name is something Von something.
Watch is probably not in his name.
But he talked about, he was trying to explain this, and because he's English is not his first language, it was
Austrian.
Austrian, yeah. So English is not his first language, and it was difficult for him. But he was like talking about how his book did so much better in the United States than where he's from, is because he was talking about like
Von Daniken.
Von Daniken, yeah. So Von isn't his name. You're totally right. He's Von something. Eric Von
Daniken.
Von Daniken.
Yeah.
He was talking about how, you know, they say you must be a reasonable, right?
Yeah.
And what he meant by that is like, and I was recognizing what he was saying, because if you look at the dictionary definition of the term reasonable, it does not mean that ghosts and aliens and fairies are not real. That's not what reasonable means. Okay? It means to use reason in your thinking.
Yeah.
But reason and logic, okay, and rationality are all reliant on whatever the current facts are. Okay, you have to have a collection of facts, events, or whatever, in order to use your logic and reason and rationality upon.
Yeah.
Okay, claiming that reasonable people don't think ghosts are real is not a logical thing to say, or a reasonable thing, or a rational thing to say. Okay, and the other thing is that that I wanted to. This is kind of a deeper topic in this, is that I've yet to figure out a concise way to explain this, but experiences are limited, period, right? Like, just going based on the standard model picture of the universe, it is enormous, almost like functionally infinite in size, as far as we can tell. Okay, probably not actually, but functionally, you know, as far as we know, and like 14 billion years old. Okay,
Yeah.
so any person's given experience from 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of their life on this single planet, in this almost infinite universe, in this 14 billion years of time, does not give them enough information to claim sight unseen that something didn't happen because it's impossible.
Yeah.
But so this is what I'm saying. Like claiming that ghosts.
See, that's reason.
Yes, that's a reasonable statement to make.
Right.
That's what I mean. So like, but the way that these people will use the words reason, logic, and rationality, just like again, go look at Rational Wiki. The name itself implies that to be rational, you cannot believe in these things, and that is irrational to say.
Yeah.
Just because, and so somebody who's never had any kind of paranormal experience whatsoever, who flat out disbelieves everyone who claims to have had one as being superstitious morons, is being irrational. Just because you haven't experienced something does not mean it isn't real.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to say about logic, reason, and rationality, and so on and so forth. That like the way that they use these terms is deeply disingenuous. Again, and like most people who are using them this way are not actually being disingenuous, or they probably aren't aware that they're being disingenuous because they are actually just regurgitating the work of people who are being deeply disingenuous, right? One of the reasons why I think, in my personal opinion, that all those fallacies on that fallacy poster are so rampant in societal discussions these days is because they're like all over news, and like they're in newspapers, they're on the news, like you see these fallacies like one after the other in arguments on TV and in politics and in like all over the place. Like you don't necessarily see them in scientific papers. Sometimes they're there. Like I can name some papers that are like the one that was trying to disprove the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis by going and looking at very specific sites and claiming that those glass spherules were results of house fires.
Yeah.
But they didn't go out and look in the desert where there weren't houses to see if there were glass spherules out there. They just looked right there where there was a human civilization and then said that they're all caused by human civilization.
Yeah.
That's a fallacy, right? But the point is that there's so much of these fallacies in the
that they've become normal
in the global discourse that people think that they're valid arguments to make. You know, that the fallacy of composition is a real, like, yeah, this guy one time said this, and that makes everything he said wrong. You know?
Yeah. I would like to make one side point about your points on
Side
logic and
points.
reason.
Side points.
Side point. Well, it's kind of going back to the these eyes thing. So when you're pointing out, like, in order to use reason and logic, you have to have a set of facts, right? To base your reason and logic on.
Okay, yeah.
So you can start with the standard model, and then you can reason from there. But like one of the fun things to do is like when you realize that there are these truly unanswered questions in the standard model, say about the ancient past, our ancient past, and you say, okay, well, what if? And you throw out a possibility, right?
Yeah.
Like that the pyramids were power plants or something.
Right.
Then, using logic and reason, like you reset the table with this one possibility.
Yeah.
Since we don't actually know what they were.
Yeah.
You plug in this thing, and then you look again with these eyes at all of everything that you've known in the standard model.
Yeah.
And it starts to rewrite itself, right?
Yes.
It starts to rebuild itself, and then you
Everything's waves.
might come upon something that's like, okay, no, that kind of makes this idea
Some falsification.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But along the way, you'll also find something that may shift your idea. Well, oh, it could be this. Like in this scenario, it's here.
Yeah.
And then you go back and look at the pyramids again, which is what you
Right.
were doing before,
Yeah.
going from the pyramids to these other things, right?
Right.
And you start bouncing back and forth. I just love that. That's the these eyes thing, using logic and reason
Yes.
to go through all this.
So the watcher asks if a side point is like a mid-back tank.
Yeah.
I have a mid-back tang about that. You mean a side point? Yeah.
All right.
I cannot do that.
So one more thing he put up here. The sharpshooter fallacy. You pick only the data that supports your conclusion, and then you destroy other arguments because your opponent's reasons are invalid because they don't come from your data.
Yeah, that's mean, man.
That's just mean, man. All right. That's it for this week. We went a little bit long, so I'm just going to say thank you guys very much, all your listeners and everybody I normally thank. And again, go check out episode 62, Clint Beckham. If you guys want to go on arrowhead hunts or digs, or you want to go shoot yourself
Texas.
out in Texas. Yep. That's it. Thank you guys. Good night, Adamu. Stop using fallacies.
Snakes!
accept you with open arms, traveler. How may I aid you? Accept you with open arms, traveler. How may I aid you?